Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Big Checked Crochet Scarf, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description where you'll find the written pattern, as well as links to all the supplies you need, or go to your favorite search engine and simply type in Mooglyblog Big Checked Crochet Scarf, and it should pop right up. To make this pattern, I used a USL 8mm crochet hook and almost 1,000 yards of Caron Colorama Halo Perfect Phasing. This is a really gorgeous yarn with some unique properties, so this yarn has some unique effects, as each color fades throughout the scarf. I used 3 colors, Vanilla Frost, Beeswax Frost, and Nutmeg Frost, but you should choose 3 coordinating colorways that you love. Let's go ahead and get started making our Big Checked Crochet Scarf. As you can see here, the Big Checked Crochet Scarf certainly lives up to its name. It measures approximately 13 inches wide and 120 inches long, excluding this beautiful fringe. So it's 10 feet long as written. I did this because I love having a big cozy scarf, especially when it's very cold out, that I can wrap up around my neck and around my torso in a variety of different styles and still have enough length to get the look I want. However, it's very easy to adjust this pattern for size. You simply want to start with a multiple of 3, since we're using 3 colors and we want them all to be the same width, and then you can simply repeat each of these stripes until you have the length of scarf you desire. Then, of course, I've added this beautiful loopy fringe you can see right here. These are simply chain loops. I like this fringe a little better rather. We don't have to trim it off to all be the same length. It all becomes the same length because we're chaining it, and I think it just gives a really nice look. But of course, you could leave the fringe off altogether or add whatever style of fringe you prefer. So let's go ahead and jump in on how to make our beautiful big checked scarf. The trickiest part of putting together your big checked crochet scarf is figuring out your color plan. Here you can see I have 3 different versions of Caron Colorama Halo Perfect Phasing. Each one has a really gradual color change that goes throughout the skein, which is going to be perfect for this project. But we need to think about how we're going to work through these skeins as we make our scarf. We start at one end of the scarf and one end of each of these skeins. Then as we work through our scarf, our colors will gradually change along with the skein. We're also going to be shifting those colors over to create the pattern seen in the Big Checked Crochet Scarf. So let's say, for example, I started with the outside edge of all of these. Laid out like this, they look great, but when I shift this color over, you can see we're now going to have 2 blocks of the same color right next to each other, which is fine if that's the look you want, but I like to have 3 different colors in each stripe. So we need to think a little bit more about how we want to use these skeins. And this is the same issue I ran into in the original colors I chose, where 2 of the colors on the outside had a really similar color, and that end of the scarf would have looked like it was chunks of 2 blocks of one color and one chunk of a third color. So in order to help avoid that, for one of the skeins that would have been like this, I chose to work one of them from the inside and the other one from the outside. That way, these 2 might cross somewhere in the middle, but the middles you can see here are actually a little bit different. This one, I could start from either end, so for the easiness of just using the skein, I'll start this one from the inside. So, looking at these, I might go outside, inside, inside. But I need to think that through as well. If I start this one on the outside, at the end, I will be this pink. If I start this one at the inside, at the inside rather, by the other end, I'll be pink. Then we'll have 2 pinks next to each other. So again, we just have to think it through a little bit more. Now, what if instead I started this one on the outside, so it would move from this teal color to blue. Start this one on the inside, it will go yellow to pink. Start this one on the inside, it'll go pink to teal. So then that way we will have teal at one end and the other, but all the other colors will be different throughout the skein. Again, just take some time and really sketch it out if you need to figure out how you want to lay out your yarn. In the original, I did the Vanilla Frost from the outside end and the Beeswax and Nutmeg Frost tones from the inside ends. But again, just give a little bit of thought before you get started crocheting. As you can see, I've got all 3 of my skeins here ready to go. Color A, I'm working from the outside, and colors B and C, I'm working from the inside. A is easy to spot because there's no label on it, but if you'd like, you can mark the labels B and C for the others to help you keep track. We're going to be starting with a row of foundation double crochets. If you need a separate tutorial for that, perhaps with some not so fuzzy yarn, I do have a video tutorial for that on my YouTube channel. Additionally, there are instructions included in the written patterns, in the written pattern to avoid using the foundation double crochet if preferred. Here, I'm going to start with a slip knot and then chain 2. Now that chain 2 will not count as our first stitch. Instead, I'm going to yarn over and insert my hook into that very first chain we made, the one right next to the slip knot. Yarn over and pull up 1 loop through this chain. Now I have 3 loops on my hook, my active loop, my yarn over, and what will be the chain at the bottom of our first stitch. Now we yarn over and pull up a loop through that chain, and then we finish our double crochet. Yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So that is our first foundation double crochet. To continue our row, we yarn over and go under the 2 loops at the bottom of the previous stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop, and now that will be the chain at the bottom of our second stitch. So we yarn over and pull up a loop through just that loop, then yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. That's our second foundation double crochet. All the rest are made just like that second one, so let's do another one together. Yarn over, insert our hook under those bottom 2 loops at the bottom of the stitch, yarn over and pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through the first loop, and then finish our double crochet. Yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. Now, in the written pattern, to make our 13-inch wide scarf, we start with 11 foundation double crochets of each color for a total of 33. However, as I mentioned, it's easy to adjust the width of this scarf. You just want to make the same number of stitches in each color. So, for demonstration purposes, let's pretend we're making a skinny scarf. Now remember, that initial chain 2 does not count as a stitch. So right now I have 3 stitches in this color A. Let's make 1 more, and in that one, we'll switch to color B for a total of 4 stitches in color A. We yarn over, insert our hook there at the bottom again, yarn over and pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over and pull through 2, and now, get myself a little bit more play there. Now, rather than finishing this stitch with this color, since I know I want my next stitch to be in color B, I'm going to go ahead and finish this stitch with the end of color B. I just take that end, come in a few inches here, give myself enough room so it doesn't just pull back out, yarn over, and finish the stitch with color B. Now I am going to sort of hold on to these just for a moment to sort of hold them anchored here, so I've got a little bit of leverage. Then I yarn over, go under the 2 loops at the bottom of the previous stitch, just like we've been doing. Let those ends just hang out there. Yarn over and pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 1, then yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. Now, you might notice this being a little loose up here. We can just go ahead and give that a little tug back on the end. Our first end here, color A, we want to leave just hanging right here. We don't want to try and incorporate it into our stitches at all because we want to pull it back up when we come back for our second row. So now we need to do the same number of stitches in this color that we had in this color. Again, in the original, it's 11 stitches of each color. So here we have 4. We'll want 4 in color B as well. We've got 1. So now we'll make our second, just like I was doing before. Then a third. You can see once you get the hang of these foundation double crochets, they are quite quick. Now that's 3. So on the 4th one is where we're going to be switching over to color C. Again, in the original, we have 11 stitches of each color. So we pull up our loop. We get to the point where we've got those last 2 loops left on the hook. And now we'll bring in our end for color C. Again, I'm just going to come in several inches to make sure I don't accidentally pull it out as I work with it here, and finish that stitch with color C. Now I'll yarn over with C, go into the bottom of that previous stitch there, pull up my loop, yarn over, pull through 1, then yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. And again, that likes to pull up on me, so I just come back here and give that yarn end a little tug and tighten it right back up to where it's supposed to be. Then we can finish up our row with the same number of stitches here in our color C. So there's a second one, followed by a third one, and then finally a fourth one right there. So one more time, as you'll recall, the original had 11 stitches of each color for a total of 33. Here we've just worked 4 stitches in each color for our little demo scarf. And this one is about 4 to 6 inches wide, so more of a skinny or standard scarf size. So this would be a good rule of thumb if you wanted, or just a starting point, I guess I should say. If you wanted to make your scarf a little narrower, this is more of a standard scarf width, maybe a little thinner. You could do 5 or 6 in each color if you wanted just a little bit wider, or go all the way up to 11 for our great big super scarf. Then we're ready for row 2. Now, as I go, I do like to try my best to keep my yarns from getting tangled. It's really helpful if you can lay them out on a table like this as you go. Then, as I know I can turn and work back here, starting with this color, I can just move it right into place as I go. Whatever system works for you, though, as long as it works, is absolutely fine. So we get to the end of row 1. We're ready to turn and come back the other direction for row 2. We're going to start, of course, with the same color we're using. We want to make nice blocks here. So for row 2, we're going to start with a chainless starting double crochet, or whatever double crochet substitute you prefer. As you know, the standard is chain 3 for a double crochet, but I find that doesn't look quite as nice. That said, if you prefer it, or again, some other double crochet substitute, that's fine. And just like the foundation double crochet, alternative instructions are included in the pattern. So here I've pulled up to the height of a double crochet. I'm going to anchor the top of that loop with my finger, yarn over with the loop itself, and insert my hook right in the top of that first stitch, where I will yarn over and pull up a loop. Then yarn over and pull through that loop and right behind that yarn over, and now I can release the top of that loop and yarn over and pull through 2 to finish. This is the chainless starting double crochet, and I do have a separate tutorial for that on the YouTube channel as well. Then we're simply going to double crochet in each stitch of the same color, essentially. Again, the written instructions really spell it out, but with this one, you can use your eyes quite a bit as well. Now, I also know I'm going to have 4 stitches in this color because that's the width of scarf I'm making. So I've got 1, 2, 3. I know this is going to be my last one, and I can also see that right here. So this is where I'm going to be switching colors again. I'll start this stitch, stop when I get to those last 2 loops. And this is why we don't want to work over any of those ends. We just leave them hanging right there. Now, color B is right there waiting for me. I can yarn over and pull that loop right up there to finish that stitch. Now I need to make my first stitch in our orange color here, our color B. So I'm going to yarn over, and this is a little something I like to do to really kind of give myself some really clean lines between these blocks. Before I insert my hook into this first stitch here, let me get that straightened out here. I'm going to first slip it just right under that loop that I pulled up, that bit of yarn, and then insert my hook. Then I'll yarn over and pull my loop up and through. And you can see how that pulls it over, and I think hides it a little bit more, so we don't see that little bit strand sort of pulling across our colors. Again, I just want to leave the color we're done with hanging out right there. I can give it a little tug if it wants to loosen up, but I just want to leave that hanging so we can come back to it in the next row. Then I'm going to continue across in this color, whatever color we're working with here. It happens to be B. And then when we get to the last one of that color again, it's time to switch. We start our stitch, drop the color we've been working with, pick up that next color, yarn over, and pull through. And then we want to do the same thing. Make sure all those little ends are back there. We want to make sure our yarn is where we need to pick it up next time, but then we yarn over, go just under that bit of yarn you pulled up and through, go into that first stitch there. Did we get both of those loops? Nope, there we go. Yarn over and pull up our loop. And you can see it just catches that little bit of yarn that's traveling with us. Finish that stitch and continue on across to the end of the row. Rows 3, 4, 5, and 6 are pretty much Exactly what we've been doing here, just switching the color when we get to the color change. Let's work another row together. We're going to start again with a chainless starting double crochet. Pull that loop up, secure it, yarn over, and insert the hook in our stitch. Yarn over and pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2 to finish. Then we double crochet in each stitch of the same color until we get to that very last one. So that's 3. Here's 4. So I know I want to stop with 2 loops left on my hook. Drop that color. Grab the next color. Oop, that's the cut end. Want to make sure the end, not the cut end, but the end with the skein attached is the one we yarn over with there and finish up with. There we go. Then we yarn over, catch just that little bit of yarn under your hook, or on top of your hook, I should say. Then we go into that first stitch, yarn over and pull up our loop, and finish our double crochet. Continue on across until it's time to change colors again. There we are. Here's our last one. So we drop that color, find the end of our next color here, the one attached to the skein, of course. Yarn over and pull through. Go right under that little pull up bit of yarn there and finish that double crochet. Again, any color, once we're finished with it, we just want to let it hang on the back of our fabric here so we can come right back and pick it up just as I've been showing here. So we just keep working back and forth in rows just like this until you have a total of 6 rows made. So I'm going to make one row more so that I get to an even number, and then we'll go through how to begin stripe 2 together. So on our little demo here, we're going to pretend we're at the end of row 6. Now, the way we switch from stripe 1 to stripe 2 is different than the transition between all the other stripes, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, etc. So for this one, we're going to do it a little differently. You can see I've finished the last stitch here. So now I'm going to go ahead and break color A, and we can trace this back and confirm, yep, that's color A. So now we are going to go ahead and finish that one off. Again, we always want to leave a good 4 to 6 inches at the end. And you can yarn over and pull that end through if you like. I like to just pull up on it and then weave in my ends when I'm done. So now to begin my stripe, I'm going to take the last color of the previous stripe, which was color A, and I'm going to make a standing double crochet in the first stitch here, first stitch of the previous row. So again, I have a separate tutorial for that if needed, but I'm just going to hold on to the end of the yarn here in my non-hook fingers, yarn over twice, and insert my hook right in that first stitch. There we are. Yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through that loop and behind the yarn over, pull through that loop and behind that yarn over. You can see I'm still holding on to that end, and I'll do that here as I make the next stitch, which is of course another double crochet. There we go. With that one made, I can go ahead and drop that end and weave it in when I'm done as well. Now I'm just going to double crochet in each stitch of the previous block of color here. Now you can see I've gotten to the end of this color. So I'm going to yarn over, start this double crochet, and now, because we didn't turn, the pink is waiting there for me. I can go ahead and grab that pink and yarn over. Oops. I drop the teal there, make my fingers work a little better, and finish that stitch right there. Now I'm going to yarn over and work over each of the yellow colors with the pink. Again, because we didn't turn, our colors are waiting for us on the other side. This will be different when we do the other switches to the other stripes. So for now, though, I'm shifting all the colors over one. Let me pull up a little bit more. If I believe this would be my color C here, which is now in the middle. There we are. Now we get to the last one of those. So again, this is where I want to drop the pink and pull up the yellow. And now we can just work in each of these blue stitches here. So this takes us to the end of the row. And then of course we'll come back and work the other direction. So the next few rows, again, in the written pattern, it's 6 rows of each color. So for the next 5 rows, we are working in this color pattern now. The yellow, the pink, the blue, back and forth in rows until you've built up that next block. So I'm going to add a couple more rows here, and then I'll show you how the rest of those stripe color changes are worked. So for our little demonstration scarf, we're going to say we've worked another 6 rows for stripe number 2, and now we're ready to switch to stripe number 3. This is how the switch happens for all the remaining stripes throughout the rest of the scarf. Just 1 to 2 was funny. Stripes 3 through 30 are all the same. When you get to the last stitch of the 6th row, you're going to come back here, stop with those 2 loops left on your hook, and come back and break the first color of that row, whatever that color at that point is. Then we take that end and we are going to finish that last stitch with what was the first color of that row. So I'll just yarn over with the end of my yarn and pull that loop on through. Then we're ready to turn and work the first stripe of our new row, or should say the first row of our new stripe. So I'll turn my work, and this part can be a little tricky. If you make the chainless standing double crochet there, you want to pull up on that loop and make sure you're not pulling the cut end too much. Hold on to that a little bit there. And then we can turn and make our first stitch. Again, you can use a different double crochet substitute if you prefer. But one thing we want to watch and do, and I didn't do it, is we want to make sure now that we work over each color of the block, not the cut end, again, the end that's attached to our skein, so that we can bring it over to where we need it. So let's do that again. I'm going to pull up my loop there, make sure I've got enough tail end, get a good grip on that tail end. Then when I turn and work back into this stitch, I'm going to make sure that for this stitch, I get that tail end and the end attached to my skein here. There we are, also on top of my hook. Just take your time here, get all those sort of straightened out, and hold them against your fabric. Then you can yarn over, pull that loop up through, and finish your stitch. Now, this does a couple things. This anchors down that yellow right there. We're not going to continue working over it just for that first stitch. From now on, we're going to let that hang. We'll weave it in when we're done. In fact, I'll just pull it over to the side of our blue. This blue, you can see from our block right here, I should say maybe the teal, we want to work over it to bring it over so that it can go on top of this pink block. So with each stitch in this first section, every time I make a stitch, I'm going to make sure that I grab that same color that we're working into and work over that end as well. We're not tacking it down, we're moving it to where we want it to be. So make sure we've got that end of the yarn there, the one attached to the skein, until we get to where our color change is. Get that yarn straightened out a little bit there. You can see here is where our color change is. So I'm still going to work over that color, stop when I've got 2 loops left on the hook, and finish with that color we've been working over, just like that. Now I'm going to continue working with this color, but now I want to work over the pink. You can see how that one is hanging out here in front. I am going to actually leave it for our second stitch. This is a little something as I was making the scarf that I discovered that worked really well for me. But I'm going to go into that first stitch of the new color just as a normal stitch without worrying about anything other than my stitch itself. Then with the second stitch, this is where I'm going to catch that end attached to the skein and work over it as well. Again, just a little thing, but I found that moving it over to this second stitch rather than up to the first stitch just gave me a little bit of a cleaner color break there. So now once again, as I make each of these stitches, I want to make sure I work over this end. Wherever is most comfortable. Our yellow end is just hanging out there. Oop, make sure I've got the right ones there. There we go. We're making blue stitches, working over our pink now. So now we're at the last one again. Make sure we're still working over that pink. But now with 2 loops left on the hook, we will finish our stitch with the color we had been working over, just like so. Now we are in that last section. So again, I'll work the first one, and then I'm just going to pick up that color for the second one. Now this one is a cut end, so I don't have to work over it to move it. Now I'm just working over it to tack it down a little bit. A little bit less weaving in to do at the end. So I'll work over it for a couple of stitches, and then I'll let that hang out there as well and weave it in when I'm all done. Then I will work into that last stitch like so. And with that, our yarns are all moved over. They've all shifted over to the proper spot. You can see how our checked pattern is developing, and we can go back to making 6 rows in this color layout. Then the same thing. When we get to the last one, we would cut this one and shift it over and just keep moving our stripes just like that. So now you can see how this worked out in the original scarf. We started out with our 3 colorways, and then we're just shifting them over. You can follow the brown or the yellow. It just depends which side you're looking at, which direction those move. It is completely reversible. But every 6 rows, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're going to just shift those colors over one block. And you can see too how the colors are starting to change. It's of course a pretty gradual change, but as we work through our 10 inches, or rather 10 feet of scarf, you can see the white is starting to become a little bit more cream colored. The yellow is starting to get a little less bright. Our brown is changing a little bit as well. And then by the time we get all the way to the end, our colors have changed quite a bit. After you've made the length of your scarf, which as shown here, again, is 30 of these stripes, so 30 times 6 would be a total of 180 rows. When we're at the end, then you can add your optional fringe. So now let's add some fringe to our little demo piece. Again, you can use whichever of the colors you'd like. Again, pulling from the inside or the outside, whatever is going to look the best with your scarf. As I've mentioned, this scarf is completely reversible, at least it is once you've woven in all those ends, so it really doesn't matter which side you add your fringe to. You could add it to either side, different sides either end, it really doesn't matter. So for this one, let's go ahead and turn it this way so it's a little easier to see here as we get started, and I'm just going to use our color A. So what I am going to do is I'm going to find one end of the scarf, and I am just going to go ahead and join to the first stitch with a slip stitch. So I'll find this one right here. You can see this is actually the bottom of our foundation double crochets. This is one of the reasons I love those foundation stitches so much. It gives us a really beautiful edge to work into for our fringe. So I've inserted my hook in there. I'll find my yarn and simply join with a nice tight slip stitch. We're not going to be working back into these slip stitches. They're just meant to hold the yarn onto our yarn, essentially. So don't worry about making it loose or anything. We're just going to weave that end in when we're done. Now, what we want to do is chain 30. This is the length of fringe I like. If you like shorter fringe, chain less. If you like longer fringe, chain more. Just take a note of however many you are chaining, because you'll want to make them all the same length. So here so far, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll go 7, 8, 9, and 10. Let's just do 10 because we've got a little scarf today. We come back down here, slip stitch in the very next stitch. Again, in the original, I used 30. Our demo scarf is smaller. I'm going to do a shorter fringe. After we've slip stitched in the next stitch, we chain 30 again, or whatever number we chose to do. What did we have here? I think 10, 1. This is why we write it down, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Come back to the scarf, slip stitch in the next stitch. That is it. This is an incredibly easy fringe. And as you can see here, it is very easy to change the length. Just take a note if you are changing the length, so you don't forget however many you're using. But I think it gives a really nice look. And like I say, then as long as you remember the same number, you won't have to trim it off and make it all even. And I think it just gives a really fun, dynamic look to this yarn. And that's how to crochet the Big Checked Crochet Scarf. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.